It all begins with Weiss's stubborn desire to become ever stronger. Driven by this obsession, he begins to train tirelessly, day after day, honing his sword techniques. This journey of trials leads him to confront terrifying beasts and dangerous demons along the way. He delivers devastating blows and destroys everything that dares to stand in his way. With all this effort, Weiss finally reaches the top and establishes himself as the strongest swordsman in the entire world. However, even at the top, he feels a strange chill in the air and immediately becomes alert. Looking out at the mountainous horizon, Weiss senses an intriguing presence approaching the region. Without wasting any time, he prepares to move and investigate the origin of this power. Then he takes an absurd leap towards the heavens, crossing the night like a true beam of blue light. Meanwhile, two knights observe the shimmering trail and comment, frightened, that Weiss probably sensed a monster approaching and took off using only the physical strength from his training, without needing magic. Far away from atop a cliff, a group of terrifying monsters watches over a peaceful village below. Leading this invasion is a young demon named Dance, who is comfortably perched on the shoulder of her enormous stone golem. Dance begins to laugh arrogantly and declares to her subordinates that the village now belongs entirely to her. Their monstrous minions celebrate with shouts, eager to conquer, crush, and plunder everything in their path. She finds the situation amusing and can't wait to show humans just how terrifying demons can really be. But before she can give the order to attack, Weiss plummets from the sky unexpectedly and lands with full force right in front of the group. Dance is completely shocked when she looks up and immediately recognizes the famous warrior. Annoyed to see him there, she stammers in anger at having her plan interrupted, while Weiss calmly retorts that he's the one who should be complaining about the reunion. The swordsman warns that the village holds nothing of value for the demons, and orders them to simply turn back to avoid unnecessary combat. Dance doesn't like this calm tone at all and replies irritably that she's only there for pure fun, to mess around with the humans a bit. She fixes her gleaming, reptilian eyes on him and asks if Weiss has forgotten that humans are nothing more than toys in the hands of demons. Having no patience for further conversation, she orders her monsters to attack the warrior once and for all. However, with just one swift and brutal movement of his giant sword, Weiss eliminates all the attackers in the blink of an eye. Seeing her minions fall so easily, Dance clicks her tongue in frustration and realizes she needs to resort to something far more destructive. With a confident smile on her face, she activates a bright magic circle to perform a new, gigantic invocation. An immense stone creature emerges from the flaming ground right before Weiss, enveloping the hero in its colossal shadow. Dance screams hysterically, urging the immense golem to crush and transform that insolent human into a pile of minced meat. Weiss coldly analyzes the giant enemy and remembers that this type of earth monster will continue to regenerate endlessly if he doesn't destroy its core. Knowing exactly what to do to end this quickly, he decides to concentrate all his energy on his right fist. He lunges forward at high speed and delivers a devastating punch, imbued with blue power that pierces and instantly explodes the stone creature. Dance is completely horrified and speechless to see her greatest asset pulverized so easily. She begins to scream desperately, accusing the warrior of cheating by defeating her monster with a single physical blow, while Weiss calmly explains that he only used the simplest body reinforcement magic. He displays his fist and asserts that it is the genuine result of his arduous training, capable of piercing any creature that opposes him. Annoyed by his excuses, Dance screams uncontrollably that he always shows up to ruin her fun and asks if he's some kind of stalker obsessed with her. Weiss replies very seriously that she prefers well-mannered and discreet girls, leaving the demon girl even more furious for having been genuinely rejected. While the two continue arguing in the middle of nowhere, a mysterious figure appears in the distance, silently observing the scene. This mysterious person displays an intriguing smile beneath their purple hood. She murmurs that this is the perfect opportunity as she channels a powerful, brilliant magic from her hands directed at the two of them. Suddenly, a huge, bright magic circle appears beneath Weiss's feet and the group of monsters. Weiss realizes too late that they've fallen into a sneaky trap, while Dance panics completely, not understanding what kind of magic this is. A colossal column of light erupts from the ground and engulfs them all completely, while the mysterious figure merely observes the result of the spell. The hooded figure watches the magical sparks rising into the sky under the starry night, very pleased to have accomplished their goal there. Silence soon returns to the mountain valley under the cool, calm light of the full moon. Sometime later, Dance slowly begins to regain consciousness in a completely different and dark place. She realizes she is lying on a mattress next to a warm campfire, wrapped in a cozy blanket to protect herself from the cold. Weiss approaches, bringing more firewood, and asks if she has finally woken up, while her monsters rest peacefully behind him. The swordsman glances at Dance's two henchmen, commenting on how well they behaved while she was unconscious. Dance lets out a desperate cry and blushes instantly when she realizes she's practically naked under that makeshift blanket. He tries to reassure her by explaining that everything lit up suddenly and that they were probably hit by a very high-level dimensional magic. With complete seriousness, Weiss reveals that she had to remove her clothes just to check if she had any serious injuries, adding that even her monsters were very concerned about their mistress's safety. Weiss notices she's too quiet and asks if everything is all right, suggesting that perhaps he should examine her more carefully to make sure there are no serious injuries. Ashamed and furious, she begins to hit him desperately while repeatedly yelling at him to die. Weiss is completely confused and explains that he has no interest in her body, but she continues to hit him in the face and calls him an idiot, saying that the comment was rude anyway. After calming things down, the swordsman says they are facing a very serious problem and proposes a temporary truce so she can see the current situation with her own eyes. Anis is intrigued and, still holding tightly to her makeshift blanket, begins to pay attention to his warning. She gets up and walks carefully towards the exit of that makeshift shelter under the watchful gaze of the warrior. Looking outside, she is confronted with a modern city completely in ruins, under a bizarre night sky displaying 3 crescent moons. The young demon's eyes widen, and she is completely speechless at the sight of that destroyed urban landscape. Unable to contain her despair, she screams at the top of her lungs, asking what kind of crazy place this is. Even their summoned monsters seem confused and quiet, observing the new environment beside them. Backed by the warmth of the campfire, Weiss asks if she has finally managed to calm down, and she shyly admits that she has. Worried about the future, she lowers her head and asks what will happen to them from now on. Weiss takes the fire seriously and responds honestly that he also doesn't have the slightest idea. She presses on and asks if there's any possibility of them returning to the world they came from. Once again, the swordsman gives the same direct and discouraging answer, saying that he doesn't know. Anis complains that he's the worst person in the world for not being able to say something more hopeful, but Weiss retorts that he can't lie about what he doesn't know. However, Weiss insists he has no intention of just sitting there doing nothing and promises he'll find a way back somehow. He looks directly at her and asks that they collaborate on this journey of survival. With a firm and determined look, he vows to protect her until they can return home. Faced with such a sincere and heroic promise, Anis is completely embarrassed and blushes instantly. She hides her face in embarrassment while muttering that he's annoying for acting like a heartthrob at a time like that, leaving Weiss confused to the point of apologizing without knowing what he did wrong. Suddenly, a strange noise coming from the darkness interrupts the conversation and puts them both on high alert. Weiss quickly turns towards the bushes, trying to decipher what is moving there in the dark. The bushes begin to shake violently as something very fast approaches. Then, a hideous creature with a gigantic mouth full of sharp teeth leaps out of the vegetation to attack. Upon realizing the danger, the young demon shouts that it is a beast and places herself in front of Weiss, declaring that she herself will take care of their protection. Since he hasn't yet recovered enough mana to summon his most powerful beast, Anis decides he'll use his second best option for combat. She confidently extends her hands and begins the spell to summon a wolf-like beast. However, nothing happens as per his spell, and the immense stone golem must intervene hastily to stop the creature's attack. She stares at her own hands, completely confused and unable to understand why her summoning failed. In utter panic, she realizes that her magical energy flow simply isn't working in that bizarre world. The enemy monster manages to break free from the golem and charges towards them, forcing Weiss to yell for her to dodge immediately. Paralyzed by fear of the relentless creature right before her, Anis is completely defenseless and unable to move. Without hesitation, Weiss throws herself in front of her and takes the direct impact of the overwhelming attack to protect her. The brutal blow causes a large explosion of debris, hurling the swordsman with extreme violence against the ruins. Upon seeing the warrior fallen among the rubble and gravely wounded, Anis desperately cries out his name. She runs to him terrified, but Weiss tries to reassure her, saying his body can withstand the damage thanks to training, although she points out, crying, that he's bleeding everywhere. Struggling to breathe, the warrior realizes with horror that his basic body-strengthening technique has also suddenly stopped working. As the terrifying monster prepares for a new attack, the young demon tries to conjure her magic again and despairs at being unable to summon anything. Crying from frustration and fear of losing her life there, she screams, asking what the hell is happening to their powers. In a last desperate attempt at salvation, she places her hands on Weiss's wounded chest and activates a bright red magic circle. An intense glow begins to emanate from the area, shocking even the summoner herself as she notices a completely unexpected magical reaction. A colossal lupin silhouette with red eyes and a dark aura emerges imposingly from the smoke. Still confused by the strange energy she feels, Anis whispers Weiss's name as she looks at the immense creature. The giant wolf lets out a thunderous roar that echoes through all the ruins of that forgotten city. Without wasting any time, the legendary beast fiercely charges at the giant-mouthed monster. With eyes gleaming blood red, the wolf focuses on its target with a thirst for destruction. In a swift and merciless movement, the wolf strikes with its sharp claws to defeat its opponent. Faced with such brutality, Anis watches the scene paralyzed and wonders if that formidable beast is indeed the wolf she was trying to summon earlier. But the biggest shock comes when she realizes the absurd truth and questions why Weiss somehow ended up merging with the summoning. The immense beast takes a firm step forward, imposing its overwhelming presence on the battlefield. Victorious, the mighty wolf raises its head towards the three moons and lets out a deafening howl over the defeated body of its enemy. He continues to growl fiercely beneath the silvery glow of the night sky, emanating an uncontrollable bloodlust. Dance approaches cautiously and, trembling with worry, tries to call Weiss's name. The beast responds only by narrowing its bright red eyes, staring at her in an extremely menacing manner. Dance is completely terrified when the wolf roars furiously right in her direction. The gigantic creature approaches slowly, cornering the young demon in a terrifying way. Desperate and blaming herself for turning Weiss into that uncontrollable monster, she knows she needs to act fast before it's too late. With the monster about to attack her, she lets out a scream of utter panic. In a pure survival reflex, Dance delivers a precise and powerful kick right between the wolf's legs. The blow strikes the monster's most sensitive point with extreme precision and a painful crack. The wolf's red eyes nearly bulged out in sheer shock and indescribable agony. Completely knocked out by the bizarre pain, the immense wolf collapses backward as its own soul seems to float out of its body. Soon after, the immense transformation begins to unravel, crumbling into small, shimmering particles. Dance wipes the sweat from her relieved brow, celebrating having hit her opponent's perfect weak point. However, she suddenly notices something that surprises her. Looking down, she sees that Weiss has finally returned to his original human form and is completely safe. As dawn breaks in those mysterious ruins, Weiss listens to the explanation of everything that happened and asks if she ended up getting hurt. The swordsman rises, feeling a terrible and mysterious pain in his hip, unaware that he has been struck there, while Dance feigns ignorance and quickly changes the subject to avoid revealing the embarrassing truth. He remarks that he had never heard of a human merging with a summoned beast and praises Dance for mastering such advanced magic. Without wanting to take unfair credit, she explains that she never had a talent for this type of complex spell and that everything happened accidentally. She theorizes that because they were in another world, the very nature of the magic they knew had completely changed and behaved in an unprecedented way. Weiss agrees with the theory, recalling that his own body reinforcement had also mysteriously failed in combat. He becomes worried when he realizes that the loss of their normal abilities puts them in an extremely vulnerable position in the face of new dangers. But then he realizes that this newfound fusion power they discovered by accident might be the only key to surviving in that hostile place. Weiss suggests that if her magic can transform him into a beast whenever necessary, he can fight at full strength to protect them from any threat. He extends his trust to her, assuring her that by working as a team they will be able to return home, which leaves the young demon quite embarrassed. Trying to hide her shyness, she resumes her usual proud demeanor and says, laughing, that she has no choice but to help that defenseless human. With a confident smile, she declares that since he relies so much on her grandeur, she will do him the favor of cooperating. Suddenly, a loud noise coming from the bushes startles the girl, causing her to scream in panic and jump in fright. But Weiss soon realizes that they are merely Dance's monsters returning from a reconnaissance mission in the surrounding area. Seeing that the creatures indicate they have found a water source, the warrior decides they must go there immediately, while Dance is consumed by jealousy at seeing his own lackeys so friendly towards him. They follow the monsters and soon arrive at a paradisiacal lake of crystal-clear waters under a sunny sky. Without wasting any time, Dance jumps into the crystal-clear water and joyfully celebrates, feeling how perfect the temperature is for a swim. Weiss observes the landscape and comments that the location is ideal because it guarantees potable water and possibly fish for food. However, he points out that this encampment is only temporary and that their main focus remains finding clues to return home. Suddenly, a desperate cry from Dance echoes across the lake, putting the swordsman on high alert. A colossal sea serpent emerges from the depths right behind the girl, causing Weiss to scream for it as she runs towards the shore. Terrified, she swims as fast as she can, pleading for the warrior's help while the aquatic monster pursues her closely. Knowing they don't possess enough strength to defeat the giant beast under normal circumstances, Weiss makes a quick decision and yells for her to use the summoning magic right now. He orders them to repeat the accidental process from before and perform the fusion with the summoned beast. However, she hesitates, worried, asking if he's sure about this because of the risk of him losing control and going crazy again. Weiss shouts back that she will maintain consciousness through sheer willpower and tells her to hurry up with the spell. Understanding the gravity of the situation, she finally accepts the plan and prepares to cast the spell. With all her determination, she activates a large red magic circle and summons her pet aquatic creature. At that same instant, the scarlet energy of the invocation completely envelops Weiss's body in a whirlwind of power. The warrior's body begins to undergo a violent mutation as dark scales and sharp claws begin to sprout from his limbs. He transforms into a formidable amphibious warrior, half human and half merman, sporting sharp claws, bluish scales, and bright red eyes. With its imposing new form adapted for aquatic combat, it stabilizes itself in the water, ready to face the threat. He lets out a monstrous, savage growl as he tries to keep his mind under control for the great battle that is about to begin. Weiss begins to growl aggressively with his bright red eyes, leaving Dance extremely frightened by the start of the transformation. She panics when she realizes that the swordsman seems to be losing consciousness and sanity once again due to the fusion. To make matters worse, the immense three-eyed serpent re-emerges from the waters and focuses its attention directly on her. Not knowing what to do with the out-of-control hero and the lurking giant beast, she screams desperately, calling Weiss an idiot. Then, a massive explosion of water occurs in the middle of the lake with a deafening roar. Surprisingly, Weiss reappears focused and manages to grip the giant serpent's jaws with the brutal strength of his modified hands. Dance is immensely relieved to see that he hasn't lost control and is still fighting to protect her. With a fierce look, the warrior states with determination that he does not intend to lose to anyone until they can return together to their own world. He lets out a powerful war cry as he forces the enormous sea serpent's body backward. By concentrating all the aquatic energy from his fusion, he unleashes a crushing blow that hits the creature squarely. The impact is so devastating that it cracks the aquatic monster's armored skin. Cheering excitedly from the sidelines, Dance yells for him to spin his whole body and unleash the final attack with everything he's got. Following the advice, Weiss rotates his body in the air with astonishing speed to deliver a fatal punch. He channels all the rest of his power into his fingertips and vows to end the fight right then and there. The final blow descends with the force of a meteor, creating a shockwave that sweeps across the lake's water. The gigantic sea serpent is spectacularly defeated, collapsing into the water while blood splatters everywhere. Dance celebrates the great victory with enthusiasm, although he admits immediately afterwards that he found all the carnage a little disgusting. Still panting in his merman form, Weiss begins to feel the side effects of the transformation weighing on his body. Suddenly, the purple aura of uncontrolled rage begins to emanate from Weiss again, showing that he has lost his sanity after the battle. The out-of-control warrior leaps fiercely toward her, forcing the young demon to run desperately to escape the attack. Realizing he's completely lost his mind, Dance clicks his tongue and mentally prepares to repeat his infallible move. She delivers a powerful punch high into Weiss's most sensitive spot as he plummets toward her. And with that, the valley returns to its calm under the daylight after yet another painful interruption. Sometime later, Weiss is found lying on his back on a wooden pier, groaning in pain from the excruciating effects of Dance's blow, while she awkwardly apologizes for having to resort to that extreme method again. To change the subject, she proudly shows off her new human clothes and mentions that she managed to get a clean set for him too, thanks to some goblins who found the outfits in the area. She advises Weiss to rest while she and her monsters go out to patrol the area, reminding them that they cannot let their guard down in such a dangerous place. Weiss shyly thanks them for their help, but suddenly notices something strange about his own body that frightens him. Upon raising his hand, he notices that part of his skin is still covered in dark scales and claws from the fusion. The warrior grows apprehensive upon noticing that the transformation hasn't completely reversed, and fears he may be permanently trapped in that monstrous form. To his immense relief, the dark energy dissipates and his ordinary human hand returns to normal shortly afterward. Still, he remains thoughtful about the risks of using that bizarre fusion technique many times in the future. His train of thought is interrupted when Dance returns running and screaming desperately for him to get up at once. She reveals, horrified, that she ended up finding a person lying unconscious in the middle of the forest. It is a mysterious blonde girl who is now lying unconscious on the ground next to a completely destroyed wooden cart. They approach to examine the mysterious young woman, who appears to be in a deep sleep and unresponsive. Weiss examines the surrounding wreckage and wonders if it was a terrible traffic accident, confirming that she is thankfully still breathing. He notes that she doesn't have any visible serious injuries, but suggests they should take her to a doctor as soon as possible to ensure her safety. Dance questions where they could find a doctor in that desolate place, while Weiss proposes fixing the broken cart to make transporting the girl easier. He explains that it would be very dangerous to leave her there alone and plans to follow the main road until he finds a town, leaving the demon wondering if he really knows how to fix the vehicle. With a provocative tone, the swordsman says that fixing things is a basic soldier's skill and asks her to take care of the patient while he does the heavy lifting. Dance sits sullenly on a wooden box to watch over the unconscious girl while observing Weiss working with the tools. She remains completely silent, visibly annoyed at having been assigned such a tedious task. Weiss displays a beautiful, determined smile as he repeats that he doesn't intend to be defeated by anything until they manage to return home. With flushed cheeks, Dance huffs in embarrassment and asks if he always says those embarrassing things out of nowhere, insisting that she doesn't care what he says. She shakes her head, not understanding how the mind of that stubborn warrior works, as she watches him lift heavy pieces of wood. Weiss simply smiles and enthusiastically comments that all that physical effort serves as excellent daily training to maintain his strength. Sometime later, the makeshift cart begins to move, pulled by the immense stone golem along the forest roads. The mysterious girl lying in the cart begins to moan softly, complaining that she feels very nauseous from the swaying of the vehicle. Weiss comments laughing that the quick repair did indeed leave the cart shaking too much, while Dance covers his mouth, feeling very ill from motion sickness after the ride. Despite the terrible nausea, the young demon consoles herself by thinking that this turbulent journey is still better than walking and rejoices at the idea of finally enjoying the comforts of a real city. Weiss silently reflects on how much time has passed since they arrived there, frustrated that they still have no real clue how to get back home. He recognizes that this new world is full of absurdly dangerous beasts, and that to survive, he must first master this unstable fusion power before facing new battles. Her thoughts are interrupted when Marcia finally begins to regain her senses and sits up, frightened in the wagon. Upon hearing that the group is heading to the nearest town, she shyly offers to guide them as a way of thanking them. With the new guide on board, the wagon journey continues under the command of the stone golem along the dirt roads. The young woman officially introduces herself as Marcia and thanks everyone from the bottom of her heart for saving her life. Overflowing with charm, Dance introduces himself cheerfully and humorously presents Weiss as if he were a giant gorilla. Weiss discreetly tugs the demon's ear, whispering that she shouldn't give her real name so easily to strangers in an unfamiliar world. Dance tries to stammer an excuse to change his name, but Weiss just laughs awkwardly, knowing it's too late to lie now. Focusing on what really matters, the swordsman returns to the subject of the trip and asks for more details about the city Marcia mentioned. Marcia explains that if they follow that mountainous road ahead, they will reach the large city of Taguna. She reveals that she was also on her way there when she was suddenly attacked by that terrible lake beast. Weiss then extends her arm and, using a storage spell, pulls the giant head of the defeated monster from the magic circle, startling the two girls. Dance is horrified to realize he kept it, and desperately demands that he throw that disgusting head away as soon as possible. He breaks the spell, laughing at their reaction, but suddenly notices something suspicious approaching on the road ahead. Further on, two knights patrolling on horseback spot the bizarre cart pulled by the golem and decide to investigate. The squadron captain loudly orders the wagon to stop immediately, putting Weiss on high alert. The guards line up their horses, blocking the group's passage to conduct a routine inspection. With a stern look, the captain questions what that beast they saw a moment ago was, and demands immediate answers about who they are. Marcia quickly steps forward to protect them, claiming they are just ordinary merchants who have just been attacked on the road. She assures the officers that Weiss and Dance are her savior heroes and that there is no reason to distrust them. However, the captain points suspiciously at the immense exotic creatures accompanying the group, claiming that this doesn't seem at all normal for merchants. Dance takes offense and replies angrily that those creatures are merely her pet mascots. She puffs out her chest with pride and lies, saying she's a highly skilled professional monster tamer. The captain silently considers the explanation for a brief moment, seemingly accepting the answer. But then her expression changes, and she coldly declares that they are all under arrest. Dance is completely speechless and without reaction upon hearing the sudden arrest order. The officer explains that the region has suffered constant monster attacks, and that, because Dance is a tamer, she becomes the prime suspect in these incidents. Before the discussion can continue, A soldier from the squad approaches, riding hastily and shouting desperately that a horde of monsters is coming towards them. The captain is shocked to realize that the mysterious attackers decided to act precisely when she was off guard. She orders Weiss and his group to seek shelter immediately to ensure their own safety while the knights handle the combat. Seeing the guards heading into battle at a disadvantage, Weiss volunteers to fight and help in the confrontation. Dance suggests, frightened, that they should take advantage of the distraction to escape, but Weiss argues that helping them now is the only way to prove they aren't the villains. Furthermore, the swordsman displays an intriguing smile and confesses that there is something very important he wishes to test in combat. The demon stares at him, confused, having no idea what his audacious plan is. Far away, the horde of hairy monsters runs furiously through the valley, destroying everything in its path. A scout alerts the captain that there are about 10 brutal ogres advancing at high speed towards them. Even knowing they are outnumbered with only 5 soldiers, she draws her sword and orders everyone to prepare to fight with their lives if necessary. With a powerful war cry, the leader commands the frontal assault against the monsters. The knights charge at high speed against the enemy horde, raising a huge cloud of dust on the road. The captain demonstrates her great combat skill by delivering precise cuts right at the start of the confrontation. She manages to take down her first opponent with ease, maintaining her firm stance on the battlefield. However, the rest of the squadron is not so lucky, and one of the knights is brutally attacked by one of the gigantic monsters. Another guard panics completely when he finds himself cornered by the gaping maw of one of the ferocious ogres. The captain realizes too late that those beasts are far stronger than normal, and becomes desperate because she can't protect her subordinates. To make matters worse, a colossal ogre stealthily emerges from behind her horse, ready to devour her by surprise. She realizes the threat too late and closes her eyes, bracing herself for the inevitable blow. But spectacularly, a crushing fist strikes the monster's jaw and hurls it away in a gush of blood. When she opens her eyes, she is completely shocked to see that her savior is none other than the mysterious prisoner she had ordered to be imprisoned. Weiss lands heroically before her and calmly assures her that he came only to provide the support they so desperately need. The captain finds the offer of help absurd and yells at Weiss, pointing out that he isn't even carrying a weapon. With a focused look, he retorts, saying that he does indeed possess a secret weapon for that battle. The immense white-furred ogre rises before Weiss, ready to attack him with all its ferocity. The warrior focuses his thoughts, feeling the blood and flesh of the sea beast pulsing within him as he sharpens his senses as if wielding a sword. He lets out a powerful cry and activates a red magic circle around his right arm. A powerful burst of purple electrical energy explodes on the battlefield, illuminating everything around it and surprising the captain. When the smoke clears, Weiss emerges, displaying only his right arm transformed with the claws and scales of the aquatic monster. The leader of the knights is completely speechless and dumbfounded as she witnesses that impressive partial transformation. Without wasting any time, the warrior advances with speed and delivers a devastating punch imbued with blue energy against his opponent. The soldiers watched the scene with their jaws dropped, unable to believe that he was able to knock out a gigantic ogre with a single punch. Weiss turns to the knights and encourages them to seize the moment to repel all the monsters at once. He charges again against the remaining beasts, preparing yet another devastating blow with his modified fist. He unleashes a series of brutal punches imbued with blue lightning that destroy any enemies who try to block him. The guards watch in amazement as the mysterious prisoner single-handedly confronts and defeats multiple monsters without the slightest effort. The captain quickly takes advantage of the opening created by Weiss and orders her men to reorganize and retake the defensive line. She draws her sword again and commands the squad's final counterattack against the cornered beasts. Together, the knights advance with determination to eliminate the last remaining monsters in the valley. Meanwhile, Weiss unleashes another devastating blue energy punch that shatters his opponent in front of him. Climbing atop the immense, defeated ogre, the swordsman surveys the battlefield and concludes that they have finally finished off all the beasts. The captain approaches respectfully, deeply thanking him for saving everyone's lives and asking, intrigued, about the strange appearance of his arm. Weiss tries to stammer an excuse, but she politely interrupts him, saying it would be very disrespectful to try and extract secrets from her savior. She flashes a friendly smile and remarks that, with all the commotion, she forgot to ask his name. The warrior reciprocates the friendly gesture and tries to maintain a formal and natural posture when speaking to her. Weiss then officially introduces himself in a simple and straightforward manner. The captain finds his name interesting and promises that the next time they meet, she'll make sure to buy him a nice drink to thank him. But before they leave, she jokingly asks him to please change her arm back to normal, since that monster-like appearance is still a little scary. Observing the trail of destruction left by the battle, Marcia comments in horror that all the terrifying monsters have been completely annihilated. She walks beside Dance, staring at the creatures' corpses, and asks, impressed, if Weiss really did all that alone. Marcia explains that she has heard of entire orders of knights being defeated by a single one of those beasts, and questions what the true source of Weiss's overwhelming power is. Not knowing how to explain the fusion without revealing his own magical secrets, Dance stammers nervously and changes the subject, saying that he has merely awakened a mysterious and frightening ability. Suddenly, Dance comes face to face with the immense white ogre's body and is shocked by the creature's colossal size. She starts poking the fallen monster, excited that they've defeated something so gigantic, ignoring Marcia's worried warnings not to touch the beast. While poking the ogre, Dance notices a bright, colorful light suddenly emanating from his fingers. A powerful, magical pink energy erupts from the creature's corpse and rises toward the sky before the astonished gaze of the two. Suddenly, a blue holographic screen appears floating in the air with the bizarre notification that they have just transformed the ogre into a pet mascot. A small magic crystal falls to the ground right in front of them, leaving Dance and Marcia completely speechless and confused about what just happened. The two of them panic completely at such inexplicable bizarre events, with Marcia's eyes even rolling back in confusion. Dance's cry of despair echoes throughout the valley as she yells, asking what kind of insane system this is. Sometime later, the group finally arrives in the city and stops in front of an inn called Haushaute. A friendly waitress dressed in tavern attire warmly greets them at the entrance of the establishment, bringing succulent dishes. Dance takes a generous gulp from a mug of ice-cold beer and lets out a sigh of relief, celebrating finally feeling truly alive again. She praises the drink, saying it's the best she's ever had, while Marcia encourages them to eat plenty of the tavern's famous local dishes. Weiss savors her food calmly, but asks Marcia if she's sure she wants to pay for everyone's rooms. The blonde smiles sweetly and assures them that this is the least she can do for her rescuers, also revealing that the captain gave her a good recommendation to help them financially. Hearing about finances, Dance's expression changes, and he says he has a great idea of how they can get more coins. She pulls out the small blue crystal they got from the ogre and asks if there's any chance they can sell it for a good price. Marcia examines the shiny object and admits that, although it is very beautiful, she has no idea what it is and doubts that any local merchant would be interested in buying something unknown. She pauses thoughtfully for a moment, reflecting on how Weiss's colossal strength combined with Dance's beast-controlling abilities make for a formidable duo. With a serious look, Marcia comments quietly that the combined power of the two is very similar to the legends about the army of the terrible Demon King. Weiss is immediately intrigued and repeats the mention of the Demon King, causing Marcia to panic and wave her hands desperately, begging him to forget what she just said. Weiss is quite thoughtful about Marcia's reaction, while Dance just excitedly shouts, asking for another round of beer to celebrate. Night falls silently over the village under the mysterious light of the 3 crescent moons that shine in the sky. Back in the hotel room, Dance throws himself onto the bed with a full stomach, sighing with satisfaction at having eaten and drunk so much at dinner. She revels in the comfort of a soft mattress and the wonderful feeling of being back in civilization, under Marcia's good-humored gaze. Marcia sits on the bed next to her and shyly asks if it's okay for them to share the same hotel room. With a mischievous little smile and blushing cheeks, she asks if Dance and Weiss aren't a couple. Dance blushes intensely with embarrassment and starts yelling, not knowing what to say, while Marcia bursts into laughter and apologizes, saying she deduced it from a romance novel she recently read. She explains that in the story, a man and a woman were running away together through a desolate forest and ended up falling in love, leaving the demon girl annoyed by how romantic the blonde is. Embarrassed, Dance begs her to change the subject immediately and start talking about something much more fun. Marcia remained thoughtful for a few moments, trying to remember some interesting news to share. She then reveals a startling secret: the world they are in exists entirely underground. In the next room, Weiss is extremely shocked to hear from Dance about the existence of an underground world and tries to process that absurd revelation. He crosses his arms by the window and asks what exactly that means for their situation. Dance explains that, according to the blonde, all sorts of objects, debris, and trash from other worlds simply end up falling into that place without explanation. She goes on to say that Marcia calls that dimension the bottom of the world, where even humans occasionally end up falling by surprise. Weiss reflects that the people who fall there are known locally as the Fallen, realizing that he and Dance are now also part of that group. He concludes that this explains why the rules of that world and of magic are so different from anything they knew, while Dance warns that he has one more valuable piece of information to share. She enthusiastically reveals that Marcia has actually met and spoken personally with another fallen person in the past. Dance proudly points out that if they find this person, they might get valuable clues on how to get back home, demanding credit for her excellent investigative skills. Weiss displays a genuine smile of gratitude and agrees that this information is indeed a huge step forward in their journey. Excited by the compliment, she asks if she isn't wonderful, receiving confirmation from the swordsman that she helped a great deal. With her eyes shining with happiness, the demon girl demands that he continue praising her cleverness without stopping. Weiss is unsure what to do with that exaggerated reaction and asks, confused, if she really wants more compliments, receiving a very enthusiastic yes. Unable to say nice things, he simply pats her on the head and awkwardly calls her a good girl. Annoyed by such a lame and childish compliment, Dance lets out a cry of complaint that echoes throughout the facade of the silent hotel. Silence soon returns to the inn under the cold, silvery light of the Taguna City night. In their cozy bedrooms, Dance and Marcia sleep soundly under the warmth of their blankets. In the next room, Weiss is also resting and trying to regain his strength for the long day of searching that awaits him. But in the silence of the early morning, the warrior's eyes suddenly widen as he hears a terrifying and menacing crash outside. A colossal creature resembling a blue frog emerges from the shadows and lands, with full force right at the entrance to the city walls. With a terrifying gaze and covered in blue warts, the beast begins leaping towards the residents' houses. Panic immediately sets in, and the patrol soldiers rush through the streets organizing the defense and ordering the guests to be evacuated from the inn in haste. At the main gate, the squadron of knights led by the captain quickly positions itself to try and contain the monster's advance. With a firm and focused gaze, she orders that no one allow the beast to cross that defensive line so as not to harm civilians. Without wasting any time, she commands the archers to unleash a massive hail of arrows against the opponent. Hundreds of projectiles rain down from the sky and strike the giant frog's body with extreme precision. However, to everyone's dismay, the arrows don't even scratch the amphibious creature's thick armored skin. The captain bites her lip in frustration, realizing that the squad's ranged attacks were completely useless against the monster. Annoyed by the gunshots, the giant frog opens its gaping mouth menacingly, preparing to counterattack. In a fraction of a second, he shoots his long, viscous tongue at high speed toward the group of soldiers. The brutal blow hits the guards with the force of a battering ram, hurling several of them into the air amidst the rubble. The devastating tongue changes course and advances fiercely toward the defenseless captain. With no time to react and swerve while mounted on her horse, she widens her eyes and braces herself for the worst. But before it can be hit, a massive blue shockwave repels the surprise attack with maximum force. Weiss suddenly appears in the smoke and intercepts the monster's tongue with her bare hands, leaving the leader of the knights completely paralyzed with surprise. He roars furiously and focuses all the energy of his partial fusion into his right fist to counterattack. With an impressive leap, he launches himself towards the giant frog, preparing a devastating punch. He lands a full-force blow on the creature's head, but realizes with apprehension that the amphibian's skin is absurdly resistant. Feeling the impact being absorbed by the biological shielding, he concludes that ordinary physical attacks will have no effect there, and that he needs something much more powerful. He recoils back to the ground and tries to devise a desperate strategy to break through that impenetrable defense before the beast tramples him. Weiss notices the decorative water fountain of the inn right behind him, and suddenly has a brilliant idea to defeat his opponent. He makes the water from the fountain shoot out like a powerful jet in his direction. The warrior focuses and channels the power of the sea monster that is fused to his body, feeling the deep connection pulsing in his veins. Knowing that in that hybrid form he is able to control the element of water, he begins to gather all the water around his claw. It concentrates and compresses the water jet with extreme precision, increasing the pressure of the magical flow to absurd levels. Weiss points his fist, energized by a spiral of cutting water directly at the giant frog. With a cold and ruthless gaze, he prepares to unleash the ultimate long-range attack. The jet of water under extremely high pressure is fired like a cutting laser beam that pierces the giant frog's body with ease. The captain and her soldiers watch everything with wide eyes, paralyzed before that unbelievable destructive power. With the threat neutralized in the blink of an eye, Weiss relaxes his transformed arm under the moonlight. Dance rushes in and apologizes, embarrassed, for falling asleep in the middle of the emergency, but Weiss simply says it's no problem since the frog wasn't such a strong opponent after all. She approaches the corpse lying in the street and grimaces as she comments on how strange that giant amphibious creature is. Curious and remembering what happened before, the young demon decides to poke the giant frog with her finger. At that same instant, the famous bright and magical light bursts forth from the amphibian's body, leaving Dance startled to see the phenomenon repeat itself. The blue holographic screen projects into the air again, announcing that they have tamed a devil frog and dropping another magic crystal to the ground. The guards, watching from afar, whispered in fear, genuinely believing that Dance's magical ability was the cause of all this. Sensing the suspicious stares and whispers of the soldiers, she discreetly hides behind Weiss to avoid further trouble. Weiss observes the silent night, but suddenly feels an unsettling chill and senses that someone very powerful is watching them from above. Without them realizing it, a huge glowing circle envelops the area, while a mysterious soft voice whispers, commenting on how lovely those fallen ones are. A gigantic angelic figure with golden hair and majestic wings emerges, seated atop the magical barrier, observing the hero below. Displaying an enigmatic smile, the divine entity wonders if this new group of fallen beings will finally manage to amuse her. Meanwhile, from atop a mountain overlooking the city, a mysterious creature with blue wolf-like features silently observes the village. With an imposing silhouette under the glow of the crescent moons, she exudes a dark and dangerous aura. This mysterious wolf warrior stares at the horizon with a cold, focused gaze, suggesting that great trouble awaits the group. The following morning, Weiss, Dance, and their monsters gather in a clearing in the forest to train. The swordsman closes his eyes and concentrates deeply, attempting to activate his partial transformation without the demon's direct assistance. Small electric sparks, black and blue in color, begin to appear around his body as he raises his power. To everyone's surprise, he manages to concentrate the dark energy and perfectly transform his right arm with claws. Weiss celebrates enthusiastically upon realizing that he is now able to transmute parts of his body freely, and without needing her magical intervention. He considers that with more training he could expand this transformation, although he acknowledges that a complete bodily metamorphosis still depends entirely on the power of Dance. The young demon stares at him curiously, somewhat impressed by the rapid evolution of her partner's physical abilities. Weiss theorizes that he only gained this bizarre ability because of the unique rules of that underground world, and emphasizes that they need to discover what they are capable of in order to survive there. Determined not to be left behind, Dance pouts and declares that she also wants to accomplish something incredible to prove her worth. She suddenly remembers the ogre crystal she carried in her pocket and decides to use the object for her next experiment. She excitedly says she feels that if she throws that crystal, an extremely strong and loyal monster will emerge to help them, although Weiss highly doubts this theory. Ignoring his skepticism, she throws the crystal into the air and yells for the ogre to appear once and for all. However, the object simply hits the ground with a dry crack and bounces uselessly across the grass without anything happening. The two stared at each other in silence for a few seconds, overwhelmed by that failed and embarrassing attempt. But suddenly, the crystal begins to glow intensely in a bright pink hue, startling the demon girl. The immense, white-furred ogre reemerges imposingly from the magical smoke, confirming her theory in the most absurd way possible. Weiss's eyes widened in pure shock when he saw that the giant monster had actually been successfully summoned in that silly way. He murmurs fearfully that this proves they are truly capable of capturing enemy monsters and making them fight on their side in that world. Dance stares in surprise as the swordsman tries to process the immense tactical possibilities that this discovery brings to their survival. She quickly reverts to her usual arrogance and declares herself a true genius, receiving a curt and direct no from Weiss to bring her down a peg. Sometime later, everyone returns to the Haushaute Inn under the sunny early morning sky. Seated at the cafeteria table, Marcia flashes a mischievous little smile, full of ulterior motives at them. Dance, who is devouring a piece of meat, notices the mockery and angrily asks what the reason is for that silly smile on the blonde's face. Marcia feigns innocence and says it's nothing serious, only commenting on how difficult and tiring it must be to sneak away early in the morning for a secret romantic date in the woods. She begins to fantasize aloud about the two of them meeting in the morning mist, just like in the romance novels she reads, leaving the young demon completely impatient to explain that there's nothing romantic about it. The light-hearted conversation is interrupted when Weiss and the Knight's captain enter the dining hall together, commenting on how the two girls are already quite lively so early in the day. Marcia is relieved to see Weiss and the captain enter, enthusiastically calling them over to join the table. The captain apologizes to the girls for not yet having formally introduced herself and reveals that her name is Helk, the captain of the local knights. Marcia stares at her attentively and asks if she needs any help or specific information from the group. Helk confirms in a friendly manner and explains that the priest in charge of the region very much wants to meet them to thank them personally for having defeated the terrible sea monster. Without a second thought, they all accepted the invitation and began walking together towards the town's church. Dance skips for joy along the way, fantasizing aloud about the immense rewards or valuable gifts they might receive, though Weiss advises her not to get her hopes up too high coming from a holy man. She pouts and argues that her pet monsters also worked hard in the battle, and that a real prize is much better when everyone who helped can share in it. Marcia nods with a smile, remembering how bravely the creatures protected her during the goblin attack on the road, and that she also wants to give something back to them. However, Dance's eyes suddenly widen in despair as she realizes she completely forgot to feed her beloved pets early in the morning. Seeing her desperation, Weiss volunteers to go back and feed them, suggesting that she and Marcia move on to meet the priest. Meanwhile, in the forest clearing, the golem and the little dragon rest peacefully in the shade of the trees. Suddenly, the silence is broken when an iron spear is violently hurled and strikes the golem's stone head by surprise. A mysterious figure armed with a dagger watches from afar, coldly commenting that not even a direct attack to the head is capable of bringing down that stone creature. She stretches out her blade and tells her hooded companions that the only way to truly destroy it is by cutting the monster to pieces. Dance's mascots panic and become trapped by the stealthy approach of the entire group of masked assassins. The enemies draw their sharp daggers all at once, preparing to unleash a merciless attack against the defenseless creatures. The stone golem begins to tremble with fear upon seeing the blades gleaming in the daylight. But before they can make any cut, Weiss emerges from the shadows like a ghost and stands menacingly behind the group's leader. With a grim look and eyes gleaming with anger, he coldly questions what they think they are trying to do to their fellow travelers. In a fraction of a second, he grips the assassin's wrist with overwhelming force, preventing any reaction from him. With a swift and brutal movement, the warrior violently hurls his opponent to the ground. Seeing their leader easily knocked out, the other hooded assassins scream furiously and charge together at Weiss, pointing their daggers. He positions himself protectively in front of his monsters and sternly warns them to turn back, demanding to know who the hell those people are. The lead assassin, barely recovering, points his trembling blade toward the warrior. Weiss remains steadfast, flanked by his two pets who continue to growl angrily at the invaders. He repeats the question in a much more aggressive manner, making it clear that he will not tolerate any threats to his allies. To the warrior's surprise, the masked leader of the group reveals that he already knows perfectly well who he is and calls him by his own name. The hooded man scoffs at the fact that he considers those disgusting beasts as companions and coldly states that creatures of that kind exist only to be purged from the face of the earth. Weiss becomes visibly apprehensive and sweats nervously, demanding to know how this complete stranger knows his real name. The mysterious leader replies mockingly that the group of assassins had been watching the warrior's every move for quite some time. He reveals with fanatical pride that they are part of a sacred order that carries out merciless punishments in the name of their patron goddess. Weiss shakes his head, not understanding what religious madness they're talking about, but decides he's not going to tolerate that nonsense any longer. With eyes bloodshot with fury, he roars that he will never forgive anyone who dares to mock his precious companions. The masked leader narrows his eyes beneath his hood, surprised by the swordsman's audacity and determination. Realizing that any dialogue there is completely useless, the assassins steady their weapons and prepare for deadly combat. He coldly gives the execution order, commanding his men to kill Weiss and his monsters without any mercy. Weiss roars to his pets, alerting them to the coordinated enemy attack and preparing them to repel the enemy's attack. The masked warriors leap at high speed toward the group, delivering swift slashes with their daggers. The stone golem reacts swiftly and delivers a colossal blow that smashes one of the attackers against the ground with full force. The little dragon also does its part, spitting a blast of fiery flames that pushes away and burns other nearby enemies. But one of the most agile assassins manages to spin in the air and block the flames using a magical barrier of blue wind. He charges at Weiss with incredible speed, unleashing multiple swift slashes that the hero barely manages to dodge. Without giving him time to rest, the attacker spins his blade and launches a new, brutal assault against the swordsman. Weiss is surprised by the reaction time and impressive agility of that particular opponent. The dagger grazes the warrior's neck, startling him with the sheer, lethal precision of the blow. He clicks his tongue in frustration at having missed the killing blow and tries to deliver another quick downward attack. Crouching down quickly, Weiss analyzes the enemy's movements and realizes that he possesses incredibly fast footwork. He notes with apprehension that all those precise thrusts are surgically aimed at hitting only his vital points. Knowing that if the battle drags on for too long they will end up at a severe disadvantage, Weiss decides to activate her partial fusion of her right arm once and for all. Upon seeing his opponent's arm suddenly transform into a bluish, scaly claw, the assassin recoils in horror and calls him a monster. The leader of the assassins leaps toward Weiss with his sharp daggers, vowing that he will receive divine punishment from the goddess. Without hesitation, Weiss focuses his strength into his transformed fist and delivers a crushing blow to intercept him in midair. The blue energy punch hits the opponent squarely with such force that it creates a huge crater in the ground. The violent shockwave spreads through the ruins, throwing the remaining masked guards far away. As the dust and smoke settle, the survivors of the group groan in pain, realizing they are no match for the warrior. Impressed by the hero's overwhelming power, one of the men gives the order to retreat before they all end up dead there. Under the orange glow of the late afternoon light in the clearing, Weiss observes the empty battlefield and realizes that the enemies have fled. However, he soon hears a faint groan of pain and realizes that the leader of the assassins has been left behind, gravely wounded on the ground. He approaches cautiously and comments quietly that he already had some suspicions about her due to the lightness and agility of her movements during combat. Upon removing the hood, he finally confirms his suspicions when he comes face to face with the unconscious face of a beautiful young woman with long hair. Meanwhile, in the great church of Taguna, night begins to fall slowly under a cloudy sky. At the main altar of the church, Helk, Dance, and Marcia wait silently for the arrival of the parish priest. The cleric finally appears and warmly thanks them from the bottom of his heart for protecting the village from the terrible monsters. Helk does the honors and officially introduces Dance and Marcia, although the young demon responds only with a relaxed and informal greeting. Marcia whispers worriedly about whether they should really start the meeting without Weiss present, but the captain replies that they can't keep the religious man waiting any longer. The cleric fixes his gaze on Dance and asks, in a calm but mysterious tone, if it is true that she possesses the rare art of taming wild beasts. Completely oblivious, she breaks into a wide smile and boasts that she and the monsters are practically best friends and very close. Upon hearing the confirmation, the priest's gaze turns cold, and he concludes disdainfully that the young woman is a completely impure and corrupted being. Suddenly, the church's enormous doors are violently flung open, startling the two girls. A troop of hooded and armed soldiers silently and in a coordinated manner invades the sacred temple. Without hesitation, the invaders surround Dance from all sides and point their sharp swords directly at her neck. Helk becomes completely furious about the intrusion and demands an explanation from the priest for allowing that aggression within his own sanctuary. The cleric coldly declares that Dance is an impure being who controls beasts and that it is the sacred duty of the church to purge that filth in the name of their goddess, deciding to carry out her judgment right there. He adds grimly that the hero Weiss will also receive the same severe punishment as soon as he is captured. Faced with such injustice and cowardice, the demon girl clenches her teeth in deep rage. Without hesitation, she pulls out her red magic crystals and shouts, summoning her two pet monsters to battle. A massive cloud of smoke bursts from the altar, and the hairy ogre alongside the giant toad emerge imposingly to defend it. The priest recoils in fright at the sudden invocation, while Dance roars, declaring that she will never stand there waiting to be killed without a fight. She points her finger furiously at the clergyman and warns him not to underestimate her, for she will make him bitterly regret having messed with the great demon. The two colossal monsters shroud the altar in monstrous shadows, ready to destroy the entire temple on their mistress's orders. The priest sweats from the cold and murmurs in horror about the heresy of having such filthy creatures treading inside his sacred church. The beasts merely stared at the soldiers with savage looks, salivating with the desire to begin the massacre. With a shameful smile, the tamer orders her pets to crush and defeat all those meddling guards once and for all. The ogre and the giant toad gain momentum, preparing their massive blows against the enemy's defensive line. The clergyman screams in fright and recoils trembling as the nuns accompanying him begin to pray in utter panic. Utterly desperate at the imminent attack of the colossal beasts, he yells, commanding them not to dare take another step forward. However, an immense and impenetrable magical barrier of golden light rises from the ground, enveloping the altar to protect them from any harm. The attacks of Dance's colossal beasts strike the golden shield and ricochet without causing the slightest scratch to the barrier of light. The sacred dome shines intensely, keeping the priest and his soldiers in total and absolute safety against any attack. Dance is completely horrified to see her attack neutralized and realizes that they will not be able to get close to the cleric in any way. The priest laughs arrogantly from behind the shield and shouts that the goddess herself protects them, asserting that no profane art will ever be able to touch them. Helk still desperately tries to intervene, demanding once again to know the real reason for that cruel order to persecute her saviors. The cleric looks at her seriously and reminds her that she too is a devout member of the order, ordering her to fulfill her military duty and capture that evil woman immediately. He emphasizes that the goddess would never forgive a filthy monster tamer, and orders that the death sentence be carried out without hesitation. Helk clenched her teeth, her eyes bloodshot with deep rage, torn between following her military orders and protecting her moral principles. Cornered and unsure what to do against that impenetrable barrier, Dance begins to sweat nervously as she realizes she is at a disadvantage. Marcia runs to her partner and, in an angry tone, suggests that they simply destroy the entire religious temple to create an escape route. She sensibly argues that, in moments of despair like that, retreating and fleeing is by far the smartest decision to make. Dance immediately agrees to the escape plan, ready to give the final orders to her monstrous subordinates. With a determined cry, she orders her two giant monsters to destroy everything and break down the walls of the place so that they can safely escape from that trap of claws and magic. The immense white ogre delivers a devastating punch, shattering the marble columns of the sanctuary. The beast's impact is so violent that it cracks the church walls, causing a massive explosion of dust and stones. Next, the giant frog extends its long tongue to break the rest of the structure, leaving the priest desperately pleading for it to stop the destruction. He shouts furiously, asking if Dance has any idea how ancient and sacred that church was that is crumbling before them. Dance bursts into laughter and mocks her, saying that's exactly what happens when someone dares to mess with her. Suddenly, the enormous crystal chandelier from the ceiling comes loose and plummets at high speed into the middle of the hall. To everyone's surprise, the chandelier hits Dance on the head with a painful crack, causing her to groan in pain while Marcia screams her name in terror. The entire temple collapses completely in a colossal cloud of dust and rubble under the light of dusk. Silence soon returns to the valley, revealing the immense, utterly destroyed church nestled among the hills. Once in the forest, Weiss listens to the whole story and asks, surprised, if that's really how the sanctuary ended up being destroyed. Marcia confirms with a sigh, explaining that she almost managed to drag the unconscious demon out before the complete collapse. Weiss sincerely thanks Captain Kirbia for taking such good care of Dance's injuries in the forest. Kirbia lowers her head sadly and apologizes, saying that she is not in a condition to talk because of everything that has happened. Marcia breaks the silence and urgently warns that they need to leave that area as quickly as possible. She explains that the Church of Homana will certainly send ruthless assassin squads after them soon, leaving Weiss intrigued upon hearing that name. Marcia explains that all the nations there worship the goddess Halimna and that her doctrine preaches the supremacy of humans, condemning monsters and demigods to immediate purging. Weiss reflects that the priest even tried to get rid of him, the very man who saved the city, and understands how shaken Captain Kirbia must be by the betrayal of her own church. He agrees that the only way out is to flee immediately under cover of nightfall to throw off any pursuers. Back at the church ruins, the priest stands before the rubble alongside the survivors and laments what happened, blaming the heretics for the tragedy. He faces the frightened citizens and commands his flock to have no fear of the future. He raises his arms in front of the image of the goddess and begins to preach fervently to the crowd. He swears that the goddess Halimna will bring a glorious tomorrow, where all evil and heresies will be completely swept from the world. The cleric loudly proclaims that the sacred temple was cowardly destroyed by evil and heretical hands. He accuses Weiss and Dance of being direct agents of the terrible Demon King for using monster transformation and control techniques. To make matters worse, he accuses the knight's own Captain Kirbia of having been seduced by evil's minions and becoming a heretic. He calls upon all devotees and children of the goddess to unite and take up arms for battle. The priest roars furiously that land will never know peace until they eliminate all the heretics with their own hands. A crowd of devotees celebrates with shouts and raised fists, inflamed by the religious leader's hate speech. Meanwhile, far away, Weiss's group continues its silent escape through the forest under the light of dusk. Carrying Dance in his arms, Weiss asks if following that path will finally allow them to get out of the woods, and Marcia confirms that they will. Marcia watches Captain Kirbia carry the wounded assassin and remains thoughtful for a few moments at the bizarre situation. She asks worriedly if it was really a good decision to rescue and bring that mysterious assassin along with them. Weiss replies that they couldn't simply let her die, and insists that the main focus now should be on getting out of there safely. At that moment, Dance begins to moan softly and gives the first signs that he is waking from his deep sleep. When she opens her eyes and realizes Weiss is carrying her, she blushes with embarrassment and starts yelling, asking what he thinks he's doing. The swordsman calmly says it's good to see she's awake, but Dance angrily complains that it's extremely embarrassing. Weiss tells her to be quiet so as not to make noise and attract attention in the dark forest. Suddenly, he stops walking and falls into complete silence upon hearing the distant sound of approaching horse hooves. The sound of fast galloping reveals that a troop of horsemen is patrolling the road nearby. Without wasting any time, the group quickly hides behind the thick bushes to avoid being spotted by the guards. Weiss watches the horsemen pass by and confirms in a low voice that it is an official church patrol. Dance whispers nervously to Captain Kirbia, suggesting that she simply appear and order her subordinates to turn back. With a sad and disheartened look, the captain replies in a low voice that unfortunately she can no longer do that. She explains that after helping them, she was almost certainly labeled a heretic by the church in Homana, which hates heresy above all else in the world. The captain adds that in that region, church doctrine is absolute law, and that anyone who dares to challenge it is completely erased from society. She confesses with regret that in the eyes of everyone who knew her, she is now considered practically a dead person. Hearing that sad outburst, Dance is deeply moved and feels extremely guilty for having ruined the captain's life. Suddenly, danger resurfaces when a swift arrow is shot from the darkness toward Dance. The projectile lodges in the ground inches from her, leaving both girls in a state of complete shock. The sound of soldiers searching the bushes echoes through the forest, and Dance stammers in terror, calling for Weiss as the knights begin to surround them. Panicked at the approaching guards, Dance begs Weiss to simply defeat them as he always does. However, he argues that they cannot do that, as the pursuers are just ordinary citizens and attacking them would turn them into real criminals. She argues desperately that if they don't fight now, they will never escape that dangerous siege. Suddenly, a light bulb goes off in Dance's mind, and she realizes that the only logical option is to get out of there as fast as possible. She smiles confidently, stating that they just need to run much faster than anyone on that patrol. Without wasting any time, she activates her red magic circle to summon her powerful unicorn and perform a new fusion with Weiss. At that same instant, an immense torrent of red energy and electricity engulfs the hero's body to begin the transformation. Meanwhile, two guards from the patrol approach the bushes with their swords raised, ordering them to come out with their hands up. But before they can take a step, an immense beam of pink light bursts from the vegetation with a terrifying bang. A colossal black horse with red eyes and a gleaming horn appears before the guards, paralyzing them with sheer horror. In utter panic, the guards yell that it's a monstrous beast and begin to tremble with terror. In a fraction of a second, the powerful horse rushes past them like lightning, carrying Dance, Marcia, and Captain Kirbia on its back. Holding on tight, Dance laughs with excitement and encourages Weiss to run at full speed without needing to hold on. The soldiers in the rear watch the creature's absurd speed in astonishment, commenting on how this is the terrible demonic power that their goddess condemns. The molten horse surges forward like a whirlwind along the forest roads, leaving only a vast curtain of dust behind. Far away, under the silvery glow of the crescent moons, the mysterious blue-haired wolf warrior continues to watch their trail intently. With a cold and enigmatic gaze, she follows the group's every movement in the darkness. Fixing her bloodshot eyes on the horizon, she whispers the names Weiss and Dance in a somber tone. Back at the temple ruins, the soldier kneels before his leader and tremulously reports that the heretics managed to escape the trap. The soldier apologizes, explaining that the fugitives were much stronger than they had imagined, and that he has already requested reinforcements to expand the search area throughout the region. The cleric shouts furiously, ordering him to stop wasting time and go personally to the battlefield, immediately distributing wanted posters throughout all the neighboring towns. He demands that they use any method necessary for the capture, including offering a high reward, receiving immediate confirmation from the frightened soldier. Looking at the ruins of the church, the priest whispers angrily that they need to hunt down and capture those heretics as quickly as possible, no matter what. He focuses his gaze on the destroyed image of the goddess, murmuring with blind faith that the deity is watching their every move. Meanwhile, from atop her floating barrier in the sky, the golden-haired goddess observes everything with disdain, calling the monsters disgusting and repulsive creatures. She strokes a small bird between her fingers and murmurs coldly that there is no place for these filthy monsters in the beautiful world she rules. With an enigmatic and sinister smile, the deity vows to wipe out even the last cursed creature that dares to desecrate its lands. She vows to create a perfect utopia that will exist solely to silently satisfy her own desires. Oblivious to divine watchfulness, the group continues its swift escape across the plain under the dark cloak of night. Suddenly, Marcia and Dance panic when they realize the horse is accelerating faster and faster, and desperately yell for Weiss to make it stop. The creature neighs furiously and displays sharp teeth with glowing red eyes, indicating that the transformation is out of control. Dance clenches her teeth in frustration upon realizing that Weiss has lost her sanity and consciousness once again due to the fusion. She approaches the horse's head with effort, grumbling that stubborn swordsman always gives her a huge amount of trouble to control. She takes a deep breath and puffs out her cheeks, preparing to use her usual method of restraint. She starts yelling at the top of her lungs right in the horse's ear, asking how many more times he's going to lose his mind like that. She angrily demands that he fulfill his role of protecting her properly, causing the animal's wild gaze to finally begin to soften. But amidst the chaos of shouting, the enormous horse stumbles and collapses to the ground, throwing the girls into the air. Marcia and Dance fall awkwardly onto the soft grass after the spectacular tumble from their mount. Dance slowly gets up, massaging her neck and trying to recover from the painful impact of the fall. She looks ahead and sees Weiss, already back in his human form, sitting on the ground with an extremely dejected and tired expression. She runs to him, worried, and asks if he's all right, hearing the warrior quietly lament having lost consciousness once again in combat. With a sad and disheartened look, he confesses that he feels useless for having sworn to protect her, and always ending up in that deplorable state after using his power. The serious conversation is interrupted when the golem and the little dragon appear on the road, bringing the repaired cart back, leaving the young demon extremely happy with the loyalty of her pets. Marcia excitedly suggests that they use the vehicle to leave the home on a church lands once and for all, heading towards a new, safer province. However, Captain Kirbia speaks sadly and announces that she intends to leave them there and go her own way alone. She explains that it is extremely dangerous for the group to continue traveling in the company of a disgraced knight, who is now hunted as a heretic by her own nation. With her eyes downcast, she emphasizes that she doesn't want to cause them any more trouble, and that she can't continue that journey alongside them. Impatient with the drama, Dance quickly approaches and grabs the captain's arm unexpectedly, leaving her completely shocked. With a wide grin on her face, the young demon orders her to shut up and get on the cart with the others once and for all. Holding the wounded young assassin carefully in her arms, Weiss listens to Kirbia's advice on distinguishing allies from enemies, and sincerely admits that she desperately wants to learn this in the future, so they can finally continue their journey home in complete safety. Helk repeats the word allies in her thoughts, pondering deeply its meaning for her. Suddenly, Weiss hears a strange noise coming from the forest and immediately goes on high alert. He realizes that something big is approaching rapidly and wonders if it is the persecutors of the church in Homana. Helk screams desperately for everyone to run away as fast as possible to avoid direct combat. The wheels of the cart spin at high speed as the group tries to flee hastily down the rough road. Looking to the side, Weiss is shocked to see a huge beast running alongside their vehicle. He tries to decipher the creature's silhouette through the smoke, while Dance watches him, very worried, from the cart. The warrior realizes with apprehension that it is a gigantic black wolf with sharp claws and a hostile presence. The legendary beast leaps fiercely toward them, its bright red eyes gleaming in the darkness. The black wolf remains paired with the immense stone golem, demonstrating incredible speed and agility. Dance screams desperately for Weiss to quicken his pace, as danger is practically upon them. She tries to encourage her pets with all her might, assuring them that she trusts in their power to mislead the enemy. Weiss realizes the golem won't be able to withstand the pressure alone and considers merging with it to help in the fight, but fears losing control of his sanity once again. With no other choice to save the group, he decides to try and extract only a portion of his beast's power from his own human body. However, the sparks of magical energy simply dissipate around Weiss, without any transformation occurring. He becomes quite frustrated by the failure and wonders why he can't connect with the creature's power in that moment of urgency. Marcia tries to reassure him, saying that he's not yet fully accustomed to this possession magic and that he just needs more practice. Meanwhile, Dance begins to worry, thinking that if Weiss learns to use this power on his own, she will no longer be of any use to him on his journey. Helk interrupts the conversation with an imposing shout, angrily warning that this is not the right time for chatting. At that moment, an extremely frightening presence finally emerges right in front of the group of fugitives in the middle of the road. A colossal beam of purple light strikes the ground with devastating force, hurling the immense stone golem away amidst the rubble. From the midst of the magical smoke and beneath a crack of electricity, emerges the silhouette of a mysterious and powerful demon warrior. She reveals herself completely beneath an overwhelming aura of purple power that makes the entire earth tremble before her feet. Weiss and Dance are completely paralyzed with shock at the sight of that terrifying and monumental presence. Helk's eyes widen and she begins to sweat as she immediately recognizes the warrior standing before them. She whispers in terror that the one standing there is none other than the dreaded demon queen, Titenda. Without giving anyone time to react, Titenda extends her arms and activates several floating pink magic circles around her. She unleashes massive bursts of pure purple energy toward the group, aiming to crush them all instantly. However, an immense barrier of blue energy and electricity clashes against the destructive attack at the last second. Weiss manages to contain the overwhelming onslaught by using all the strength of his transformed arm to create an impenetrable shield. The group watches with relief from behind the swordsman, who grits his teeth while making a futile effort to withstand the impact of the terrible magic. Titenda analyzes the scene with complete coldness and sarcastically comments that the human's defense wasn't bad at all. Enraged, Weiss roars, demanding to know who she is, and warns that he will show no mercy if she dares to touch his precious companions. The Demon Queen stares at him, intrigued, and asks if he truly considers the monsters, and even the goddess's followers as his allies. Weiss is a little confused by the question and wonders if she's referring specifically to Captain Helk. Upon receiving confirmation, Titenda displays an enigmatic smile and comments that he is indeed a very peculiar and strange human. She floats calmly on the night breeze, exuding unparalleled elegance and power before the group. Fixing her golden eyes on him, she menacingly asks if he accepts becoming a valuable ally in her army or if he prefers destruction. But before the warrior can respond, the demon warrior vanishes into thin air in a huge, noisy explosion of purple light. Weiss finally relaxes her arms, noticing that the dreaded enemy has simply vanished without a trace. Dance makes a sullen face and murmurs that the term Demon King always reminds her of her old, unbearable boss from her time on Earth. Helk sighs worriedly as the cart starts moving again, commenting that now they will need to avoid both the territory of the demons and that of the goddess. Helk then asks Marcia if, as a local merchant, she knows of any safe and discreet place where they can go to hide. Marcia breaks into a wide, confident smile and reveals that there is a neutral city to the west that doesn't belong to either of the two warring factions. With this in mind, the group decides that the best course of action is to head towards this new province as soon as possible. But as the night is already very dark, they decide to camp temporarily in a stone cave they found along the way. Dance observes the young assassin captured and still unconscious in the corner of the cave, and wonders if she truly is a dangerous warrior given how long she sleeps. Sitting by the warm campfire next to Weiss, Marcia celebrates with relief that they managed to escape that ambush without any serious injuries. She notices the swordsman's pensive silence and gently asks if anything is bothering him after his fight with Titenda. Weiss stares into the deep darkness at the bottom of the cave and confesses that he's simply curious to find out how far that mysterious tunnel really leads.